Welcome to NTD News. I'm Kevin Hogan. Here are today's top stories. Vice President Kamala Harris in Guatemala discussing how to curb illegal immigration. What else is planned for her first overseas trip as vice president? And former President Trump made his second major public appearance in North Carolina this weekend. He gave an endorsement for a U.S. Senate candidate. What does he say about critical race theory and the CCP's role in spreading the virus? A moderate Democrat opposes his party's sweeping election reform bill. What does he say will happen if Democrats force it through by a special budget process? The pandemic-linked death toll in one California county shrinks by over 400 people. The county updated its criteria that allowed deaths not caused by the virus to count. Vice President Kamala Harris is in Guatemala today for talks on the root causes of illegal immigration. The Biden administration is also expected to announce ways to tackle smuggling and human trafficking later today. NTD's Jessica Beatty has more on the vice president's first overseas trip in office.
Vice President Kamala Harris is on her first foreign trip for the Biden administration. She arrived in Guatemala City Sunday night. Monday, Harris will hold a bilateral meeting with Guatemala's president, who she's been in talks with on immigration. It's estimated that 44% of illegal immigrants trying to cross the U.S. border are from Northern Triangle countries like Guatemala. After a full day of negotiations and meetings, the vice president then flies to Mexico City Monday night to begin another round of talks there. She's been criticized for not visiting the U.S. border yet or holding a news conference about the crisis. In response, she says her focus is on the root causes of migration, not on what it's like for U.S. border towns. One such border town is Del Rio, Texas, which has seen a surge of Venezuelans crossing from Mexico into their community. An Epoch Times reporter tweets that on Thursday evening, 57 illegal aliens from Venezuela arrived, and hundreds are coming through every day. Many Venezuelans told the Epoch Times they flew to Cancun, then to Monterrey in Mexico before crossing the river into Texas. A large portion said they plan to live in Florida, where they already have family members. So far this year, in the Del Rio sector alone, Border Patrol has apprehended nearly 11,000 Venezuelans. That's compared to only 135 in all of 2020. The surge started a few months ago. In early March, the Biden administration granted temporary protected status to Venezuelans who illegally entered the United States. Although former President Trump did not grant Venezuelans temporary protected status, he did delay deportation for a small number on his last day in office. Jessica Beatty, NTD News.
Starting today, the White House press briefing room will return to 100% capacity. For the last 15 months, the White House has been holding socially distanced media briefings. According to the White House Correspondents Association, those pandemic prevention measures seem to have worked. There has not been one case reported of journalist-to-journalist transmission inside the White House press corps. A survey shows that 98% of the 500 journalists who responded had been vaccinated for COVID-19. Also today, all press restrictions on the White House grounds will also be lifted, including the camera crews on the North Lawn, and the indoor press workspace will return to pre-pandemic levels. Senator Joe Manchin says he will vote against the For the People Act. That's the sweeping election reform bill his Democratic colleagues are pulling for. He says if Democrats push it through with the budget reconciliation process, it'll further deepen divisions. Here's more. Key moderate Democrat Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia said Sunday that he would vote against the For the People Act. He told Fox News the U.S. used to go around the world showing voting procedures and how democracy works, but now he's concerned this reform will prevent the U.S. from practicing what it preaches.
I think it's a wrong piece of legislation to bring our country together and unite our country, and I'm not supporting that because I think it would divide us further. I don't want to be in a country that's divided any further than I'm in right now. I love my country, and I think my Democrat and Republican colleagues feel the same.
He told the Charleston Gazette-Mail he believes this partisan voting bill will destroy the already weakening binds of America's democracy. What's more, Manchin reaffirmed that he would not vote to weaken or eliminate the filibuster. He criticized both Democrats and Republicans for trying to gain an advantage by politicizing election reform. The For the People Act would eliminate almost all requirements for photo ID, and it would force states to offer 15 days of early voting and allow no excuse absentee balloting. It would also make states implement automatic voter registration and allow same-day registration on any voting day. In the wake of a contentious 2020 election, many red states put forward measures to secure elections. That's by restricting mail-in voting and adding more ID requirements. On the other hand, Democrats are attempting to make permanent the emergency voting procedures used as a result of the pandemic. Manchin's opposition means the For the People Act has a slim chance at best. The Georgia Republican Party is censuring Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. They approved the resolution on Saturday, saying he failed to perform his duties in line with Georgia's constitution. That's according to local outlet WSB-TV. The state's GOP said Raffensperger entered into an agreement with 3 Democrat entities. In the deal, he agreed to promote rules notifying when mail-in ballots are rejected and other rules regarding the signature reviews of absentee ballots in their envelopes. The GOP accuses Raffensperger of undermining elections. They say his office allowed mass mail-in ballots, made it hard to match signatures, and ignored affidavits and evidence of fraud. Raffensperger says his office ensured that democracy was upheld. Maddie Parker declares victory in the Fort Worth, Texas mayoral race. It keeps the city one of America's biggest with a GOP mayor and makes Parker the youngest mayor of a major city. 37-year-old Parker ran against former Democratic County Chairwoman, who was hoping to become the city's first black mayor. Dallas News reports that Parker told supporters after the win, Fort Worth is one of the best cities in the nation to live, work, play, and raise a family. She will succeed outgoing Fort Worth Mayor Betsy Price, who's retiring after 10 years in office. Republican Price is the city's longest-serving mayor. Price is an attorney, and Parker is an attorney and Price's former chief of staff. The number of CCP virus deaths in Alameda County, California, fell about 25% after health officials updated their counting methods. That's 411 fewer deaths than the previous total. The change is reflected on the county's CCP virus dashboard after a June 4th update. Previously, the county counted people who died for other reasons as a part of CCP virus deaths. That's if they were also infected at the same time frame. For example, if someone died from a car accident, their death could still be counted towards the CCP virus death toll if the person also tested positive earlier. The new counting methods ensure the virus is the direct cause or the most likely cause of death. The county admits it was slow to fix problems with its counting methods. Alabama and Georgia real estate agents are asking the Supreme Court to block last year's federal moratorium on evictions. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's moratorium is set to run out June 30th. It was enacted to curb the spread of the virus from tenants having to move out of their homes due to rent payment issues. The real estate agents argue the CDC's moratorium shifted the economic burdens of the pandemic from renters to landlords. It resulted in over $13 billion in unpaid rent per month. The moratorium has been extended multiple times. A month ago, a judge canceled the moratorium, but her decision wasn't made official. The courts are waiting for the government to dispute it. A judge rules that California's ban on so-called assault weapons violates the Second Amendment. The federal judge making the call is a George W. Bush appointee. U.S. District Judge Roger Benitez ruled against California laws that prohibit assault weapons. People who violate the laws can face prison sentences of up to 8 years. A California resident with a concealed carry permit sued the state's top law enforcement official in 2019 over the laws. Benitez said the Supreme Court recognizes that the Second Amendment guarantee includes a right to keep and bear firearms that have some reasonable relationship to the preservation or efficiency of a well-regulated militia. The state's Attorney General plans to appeal the ruling. The U.S. Coast Guard is investigating after a ferry hit shallow water in New York City and got stuck. 118 passengers and 7 crew members were on board as the Sea Streak ferry tipped to its side Saturday afternoon. That's according to the New York Fire Department. At the time, it had been traveling from New Jersey to a Manhattan ferry terminal through the East River. Everyone was safely rescued from the ferry. Workers later got it floating again before it was towed back to a shipyard. There were no serious injuries reported. Authorities say a mechanical issue may be to blame. Still to come, the U.S. donates hundreds of thousands of vaccine doses to Taiwan. 2 U.S. senators arrive on the island to help with a spike in CCP virus cases. People in China taking virus vaccines made there are reporting hearing loss. That's as the WHO approves China's vaccine for worldwide use. All that and more here on NTD News.
Every once in a while, something comes along so masterful, it leaves you in awe. So inspiring, it changes your life. So beautiful, you wish it would never end. When that happens, it's something not to be missed. Shen Yun, coming to the Palace Theater, June 26th and 27th. Tickets at shenyun.com/Stamford.
If you're like most of us, you're probably getting fed up with the nonsense that's going on in the banking system. Did you know that top U.S. banks have recently amended their depositor terms and conditions to include the words bank failure and what's required of you in 24 hours if, or should I say when, it happens? Don't get blindsided by your bank. Call GSI Exchange today to pick up your complimentary copy of the Bank Failure Survival Guide at 866-424-2382. We'll also send you the required format to file with your bank within 24 hours of their failure, which is now required by the top banks to avoid freezing of your funds. Yes, the top banks can now freeze your money. The world is in a strange place, and banks are constantly changing the rules. So stay on top of the current events that really matter by calling GSI Exchange and requesting your free guide at 866-424-2382.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. Thanks to your support, you've helped make MyPillow become one of the fastest growing companies in America. I'm interrupting this commercial right now. Retailers have canceled MyPillow, and to thank you for your support, I'm going to pass the savings directly on to you. Go to MyPillow.com right now to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. For example, you can get my premium MyPillows regularly $69.98, now just $29.98, the lowest price ever.
Former President Trump and South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem spoke in North Carolina this weekend. Trump offered an endorsement for a Senate seat and shared his ideas on a number of hot topics, including battling critical race theory and holding China accountable for mishandling the virus. NTD's Melina Weiskup brings us key moments from the night.
Anywhere Trump makes an appearance, there is sure to be a huge crowd, both inside and outside. They started lining the streets hours ahead of Trump's visit, and the chairman of the North Carolina GOP says this was the largest turnout they've ever had for a fundraising event. Trump spoke to a large and enthusiastic crowd here in North Carolina at the Republican convention. A couple of key things happened. Laura Trump said that she would not be running for U.S. Senate, but she said although it's not now, she said that doesn't mean she's never going to run. Trump also endorsed Congressman Ted Budd for that Senate seat in 2022.
Would you agree with that, Mark? Well, he will fight like nobody fights.
So let's win this together, and let's get back to making America great again.
Aside from the endorsement, Trump spoke of a number of key issues facing the nation, labeling critical race theory as one of the most dangerous ideologies.
And we should ban it in workplaces, we should ban it in our states, and we should ban it in the federal government, and it should be done immediately.
And Congressman Dan Bishop told us critical race theory is an area where both Republicans and Democrats can come together.
I think you're going to find a lot of agreement among Republicans and Democrats across the ideological spectrum that that particular notion, that poisonous ideology, which is essentially state-sanctioned racism, is something that particularly parents of children in schools are going to rise up as Americans all together and say, this has got to go.
As the nation faces such a partisan divide, we wanted to see what else Republicans and Democrats can agree on right now. Congressman Richard Hudson told us battling the pandemic is another point of agreement.
That's an area where Republicans and Democrats can come together, look at what went right but what went wrong during this COVID situation we've just gone through, and let's try to prepare better for the next pandemic.
And he hopes the two parties can come together on combating the threat of the Chinese Communist Party. China using vaccines as leverage to promote their political agendas. Do you think that's something that Democrats and Republicans can agree on and working against?
I sure hope so. And President Biden, to give him credit, has been saying the right things when it comes to China, but they're certainly testing us right now, and I hope the president's got the resolve.
Trump floated the idea that the U.S. and other countries should demand reparations from China for their mishandling of the CCP virus and the damage it caused.
Within one unified voice that China must pay. They must pay. And as a first step, all countries should collectively cancel any debt they owe to China as a down payment on reparations. The nations of the world should no longer owe money to China. China has destroyed so many nations.
This is the first of many rallies Trump is expected to speak at this summer. He'll also be speaking in Texas at the Conservative Political Action Conference in July. Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
The U.S. said Sunday it will donate 750,000 COVID vaccine doses to Taiwan. It's part of the U.S.'s plan to share shots globally.
The United States is donating 750,000 vaccines to Taiwan as part of Washington's plan to share shots globally. The donation is a major boost for the island, which is struggling with a spike in domestic cases. The announcement was made by U.S. Senator Tammy Duckworth, who along with 2 other senators arrived in Taiwan from South Korea on Sunday. President Tsai Ing-wen said the vaccines would be a great help with their fight against the virus.
We are very grateful to the Biden administration for extending their hands and adding Taiwan to the first batch of vaccines being shared abroad. We also thank the 3 senators who are present here for their great efforts in helping to organize this. The vaccines are timely for Taiwan, and your assistance will be etched on our hearts.
Taiwan reported more than 340 new coronavirus cases on Sunday. Only around 3% of its 23.5 million people have been vaccinated, with most getting only the first shot of 2 needed. Taiwan has complained about China trying to block the island from accessing vaccines internationally. Beijing, which claims the democratically ruled island as its own, denies this. China has offered Taiwan Chinese-made vaccines, but the government in Taipei has repeatedly expressed concern about their safety.
China's CCP virus vaccines are going global, but questions remain. Concerns are rising in China over cases of hearing loss after getting Chinese-made vaccines.
The World Health Organization approved on Tuesday China's Sinovac vaccine for emergency use worldwide. But people in China are reporting cases of sudden sensorineural hearing loss, among other Chinese vaccine side effects. Yi Han from northeast China's Dalian City tells the Chinese language edition of the Epoch Times she lost hearing in her right ear 3 days after getting her first dose of the Sinovac vaccine in early May. She then went to 2 local hospitals.
They said the cause is uncertain. I told them when I had my vaccine and asked if the vaccine caused it, because I've always been very healthy. They said it's impossible or difficult to say and suggested hospitalization.
The doctor told her that her rate of recovery is only 30%.
The doctor doesn't dare to say the vaccine caused it. No one dares to say that.
Yi says she tried to report to authorities about her situation, but to no avail.
The vaccination site said it's not their business, as they're only in charge of injections. They gave me the Dalian CDC's and the Jinzhou CDC's phone numbers, but those who answered the phone all said it's out of their control. In the end, they gave me the number of the Chinese Health Bureau. I called them and they told me that I must have a medical certificate that verified the coronavirus vaccine caused my hearing loss, but no hospital will do that.
Yi has spent about $1,000 and possibly more for future treatments. She is now unable to work and says she regrets getting the vaccine.
The state calls on people to get vaccinated, and I heard it's starting to require it for travel, so I cooperated. But I had no idea this would happen. No one explained anything to me when they gave me the shot. No one lets you know about the side effects.
The Epoch Times called the Dalian CDC several times, but the calls all got disconnected. Taiwan-based former infectious disease Dr. Cheng-Yuen Yu tells the Epoch Times that sudden sensorineural hearing loss might be a side effect after the immune system is activated, and it may be related to the vaccine. Yi entered a Chinese group chat of more than 50 people, all having the same hearing problems as she does after getting the Sinovac vaccine.
Some have even gone completely deaf just a day after vaccination, and some have reduced hearing, but that's also very severe.
A Chinese netizen posted on Chinese social media platform Weibo that she became deaf after getting a second dose of the Sinovac vaccine at her school. Authorities have since deleted her post, but people can still see it through other users' reposts. In her earlier Weibo post, she wrote that a tinnitus rehab group chat conducted a survey among 14 group members. All of them experienced hearing loss following the vaccination. It starts on average 2.5 days after getting the shots. 70% of them had no physical discomfort and no medical history before getting the vaccination. And more people are posting about similar cases on Chinese social media. Sinovac announced the Phase 3 results of their CCP virus vaccine in February, saying they are around 50% effective for all cases and 100% effective for hospitalized, severe, and fatal cases.
Just ahead, researchers in South Africa come up with a way to stop rhino horn poaching by making the horns radioactive. A Japanese newspaper poll shows half of the country's public believes the Olympics will go ahead as planned. The Games are still 2 months away, but the pandemic is still causing problems there. Researchers in South Africa are working on a potentially new method to deter rhino poachers and smugglers. They're making the animals' horns radioactive.
South African researchers have come up with a new way to potentially stop poachers killing rhinos by making their horns radioactive. The University of Witwatersrand's James Larkin is one of the project's main researchers.
We hope to establish a reduction in poaching. We want to do this by injecting a small quantity of radioactive isotope into the horns of rhino. And this, we hope, will have two effects. One, it will devalue the rhino horn in the eyes of the end user, the person who's kind of buying it in the Far East. Because if we make it radioactive, people are going to be less inclined to want to own something like that.
Poachers target rhinos for their horns, which can be worth tens of thousands of dollars per kilo. Demand is mainly in Asia, where some believe rhino horns have medicinal properties and act as a symbol of wealth. The process of moving the horns out of South Africa means smuggling across borders.
By making the horn radioactive, it makes it a lot easier to track a horn if it's been taken from the animal and a smuggler is now trying to move it across international borders. Because there's something like between 10 and 11,000 installed radiation monitors at various different ports, airports, border crossings and things like that.
The study is in its early stages. For now, the researchers are injecting non-radioactive stable isotopes. They will study over the next 3 months how the isotope interacts within the horn and how it affects the rhino's health and behavior.
Half of the Japanese public think the Olympics will take place this summer. That's according to a survey by a local newspaper. This less than 2 months before the Games' scheduled opening.
Half of the Japanese public believe the Tokyo Games will go ahead as planned, whether they want it to or not. That's according to a weekend poll by Japan's Yomiuri newspaper, which was released on Monday. The Olympics are scheduled to begin in less than 2 months after being postponed a year due to the ongoing global health crisis. But questions still remain over how Tokyo can keep volunteers, athletes, officials, and the Japanese public safe. The nation is currently in its 4th wave, which has seen rising numbers of severe cases. Yomiuri's new poll showed public support for Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga's administration has dropped to its lowest at 37%. Most respondents said virus measures for Olympic athletes and participants are not enough. Top government officials have repeatedly promised to make the Games safe and secure. The poll also found over a fourth surveyed believe the Games will go ahead without spectators. While the government has already barred foreign spectators from the Games, a decision on domestic audiences is expected to be made this month.
And that's all for now. Catch us again tonight at 6:30 Eastern. I'm Kevin Hogan.
We have a new channel. Subscribe to us on YouTube at NTD News. Get the highlights of our news broadcast and the most important headlines that we curate especially for you.
Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here,